have to stand still. All right, if I wiggle a little bit too much, just let me know. How are y'all doing tonight? Good? So how many DBAs do I have in the audience? Sweet. Okay, good deal. So just 2. So I was a little apprehensive about this when I was asked. It was like, hey, would you give a talk to a bunch of DBAs? And generally speaking, like every time I talk to a DBA, I learn something new and at least have to Google 10 other things when I get back to my desk. And so I'm like, what in the world could I have that DBAs would find valuable to listen to for any amount of minutes? And so this is what I came up with. So here we go. Let's see if this works out. I'm James. I've been doing IT operations essentially for 15 years, 7.5, 8 years of that been in information security. I've done and maintained database application monitoring tools for about 4 years of that, on top of being just a general purpose InfoSec guy. I've been pretty lucky with my career. And that just kind of give you where my perspective is, just so you can kind of get that in your mind whenever you kind of go through this. This is essentially what I felt that would be valuable for you all to know that I've learned over my time doing this from my level. And so this is what we're going to talk about real quick. We're going to talk about some policies. And I know when I say policies, you're like, I'm so glad this is a lightning talk. So yay, it's just a lightning talk. There's only like 100 slides on policies. It's really not too much. Security practices, and then things. I wanted this to be pretty open because I didn't know how much research I was going to be able to do. I was wanting to do some hands-on stuff, but it looks like you're not going to have to watch me like flail through a demo, so that's good for me. So let's go ahead and get this started. Policies. So I'm going to go through and enumerate a few different policies. Let me disclaimer everything I say at this point. These are my views and my views only. This is also not necessarily, they're somewhat true. I hope to be as true as possible, let's just say that. But there may be opinions in here that may not necessarily be true, but it's the way I've made sense of the world because it's so crazy and it changes every day. And so this is my sense on things. So HIPAA. Health Information Portability Accountability Act, I believe. HIPAA, that's a long term to say, hey, protect your PHI. I believe that's health information of some sort. One of the things that you get, or at least what I learned from taking the test a long time ago, was encrypt everything. Don't ever talk about any patient or their prescriptions, and you're generally pretty good. The test is pretty easy. It's like 10 questions, at least at the time when I took it. But it kind of goes over encryption. Authentication authorization, does anyone know the difference? Because believe me, I still have a hard time with it. You know, I've been thinking this stuff for a long time. You think, oh, this guy's got it down, right? So authentication, that is when we want to say, hey, you are who you are. That is authenticate. I authenticate you as being that person. That does not necessarily authorize you to drop table, you know, whatever. So that's authorization is what authorizes you based on who you are. That's authentication. All right, so that's good. FISMA RMF is the next big policy cloud. FISMA is Federal Information something. How about that? It pretty much shows all, like, it's not necessarily DoD is RMF. It used to be, RMF is Risk Management Framework. And this is essentially the new DIACAP. I believe DIACAP's like the Defense Information Assurance something or another. It's just a way that they've implemented what FISMA is requiring them of doing, and it's how DoD, at least in the RMF case, took their spin on it. I believe DHS and other big organizations in the government have their own way to implement FISMA or their own controls beyond FISMA, but FISMA, at least, I believe, is the overarching. So with FISMA, you're going to see a lot of NIST crap, and I say crap because it's not crap. It's actually really good stuff. There's some really good documents that are so many pages. The one I found the most helpful for me, and the one that kind of at least spoke to me the most and had pictures, and I think that helps me at least to understand things, was the cybersecurity framework. And it's essentially like a maturity-based model, and it goes based on what your most valuable assets are and trying to map out a plan to protect things based on that, or at least that was the intent when I took a class a long time ago. It is, yet again, another checklist to hold you to standards that you don't really have a maturity model or plan to adhere to, and it kind of sucks because we're still having to lie or at least put up enough smoke and mirrors to get around things. Yeah, like I said, these are my own thoughts and opinions. All right, so PCI DSS, I'm almost through these policies, I promise. PCI credit card information, prepare for an audit. It seems like every time I've come to a PCI network, it is so segmented. It's like, no, that's a PCI network, don't worry about that. It's like, So what kind of traffic goes in and out of there? Nothing. It is nothing. There's no internet there. It's like, okay, that's good. How do we update things? Well, manually. Oh, okay. So I've seen this a lot. It sucks. Some places do it better than others, but this is essentially the high level. Just prepare for an audit. Seems like you want to just segment everything. Next up, Graham, Leach, Billy, the GLBR stuff, I believe. Something like that. I don't know how PII is treated in financial institutions. It has a lot to do with SOX. So let me just go into that. I think I got these mixed up a little bit. Office Comptroller of Currency, that's banking. Those guys, that one's really hard to read. Holy crap. So much legalese in those documents. Oh, I'm so glad we have a risk team that deals with all those. Those are the ones you want to make friends with, because they're probably going to be the one asking a lot of questions about, hey, are you doing this? Are you doing that? And doing whatever. And you better be doing it, because you better be doing what you say based on this stuff. There can't be a bank. SOX. So this is all your publicly traded stuff. From what I've seen, it seems like if you get by with logging SA, or at least all your privileged system accounts, as well as protect that data from tampering, so that way you can at least tell the stockholders with some sort of integrity and fidelity that, hey, my numbers are right and not wrong, and yeah, you can trust what I say and invest in me. And so that's SOX for you. I'm so sorry, y'all. Okay, so just to sum all this up, so if you do these things, I can almost assure you, without a doubt, no matter any of these other crazy policies, you could probably pass any audit they come across. And one is access management, and I kind of bucket this in there. There's a little bit of like limiting of privileges on that. I think access management is kind of a big bucket, as well as like rotate passwords. You can limit access depending on what kind of agents. I don't know what. I'm not a database guy, but I know with my agents that I've run in the past, you can limit what table access just based on where they're coming from or what application it sees, depending on what database is. They each log differently, and how you can actually manipulate those connections. Log all the audit things. I put this requirements grow. It's amazing what I've seen that, especially whenever you say, hey, this whole database is my most precious jewels, and you're not at least logging all logins and queries. Log-offs, I guess, are kind of interesting too, but at least logins and queries to those databases, not just the tables, because I know you can just do it to the tables too, like, hey, I want to log access to this table in this database, but if you, I would say just log all activity. It seems rather lightweight with disk space these days. I haven't had any problems keeping around 6 months to 12 months, depending on what your what database you're running and what your requirements are, or even what you say your requirements are. So another thing I'll even say about this, and I didn't say this before, if you don't keep the data, like the precious data, like very long, then they can't steal it, right? So like if you delete data or have a good disposition on data, I didn't really put that in here, but that's also a good thing to do. Encryption, and then backups, dang it, the one thing that you never think about until the end. Okay. Policies. I am so sorry, y'all. We are done, though. Now here's some practices to kind of implement some of the things that I said, hey, if you just do these simple big bucket things, I almost have to guarantee you'll get by with any audits or any compliance. So this is ways you can do that. So logging. How do you log all the things? You can do native logging. Native logging is not bad at all. I know from the information security perspective, it helps with the separation of duties to have an agent that they're able to manage. It sucks, but either way, with at least the agents I've maintained and seen in the past, I can limit the amount of memory it takes and the amount of storage, and it'll start dropping logs or stop processing things when it reaches a limit, a threshold. And so I don't know how easy that is to do with like native SQL logging, to be like, okay, don't process any more queries until you're able to write that log event. And I've seen native logging work, so it's not like it's too much of an overhead or a burden on the system itself. But I think good, just knowing your systems, knowing what kind of performance they currently have, and just have a good test environment, hopefully, to kind of test out some of these, whether it be agent-based, log-based, or native log-based. I should have put native log in there, native logging, and those are the two big ways to do it. Here's some open source agents. that you can use today, and all 3 of them are very solid. I had no idea syslog-ng has a Windows agent, but they sure enough do. Love me syslog-ng, but I've only ever used it with Linux and Nix logging. But Snare and NXLog are both 2 solid open source, but of course there's paid for versions there as well. Okay, so monitoring. How often do you guys actually go back and look through your logs? See, yes. Good job. If nothing else, it helps find some misconfigurations. I know it's one of the last things you do, and I don't know if it's because I'm a junkie and I like looking at logs, just because it's curious. I even kind of think, like, what was the developer thinking when he wrote that error, like that event routine to catch that error? Like, what was he doing there? And some of them, when I don't see any error message, it's like, well, you bastard, what weren't you doing? But monitoring logs is good for not only to find anomalous login behavior and those kind of things, and usually it's best with another tool, but I think with you DBA guys out there, probably figure out some good analytics to determine interesting anomalies in logins, but there's good tools out there that do it too, and then also help find misconfigurations. So I probably should have started with preventions, because I'll say this, and I don't know who said it, some smart guy, an ounce of prevention is worth more than a pound of cure. It's true. And so if you can do anything to prevent an event or an incident from happening, then that's your best way about it. And so some preventions here. So for the DBAs out there, do you guys have any access to the code that's written that wraps the data for your database? How much interaction do you guys have with the web developers, and do you guys actually write the statements, or is it a stored procedure?
So whenever I'm helping a client, what we normally do is we go through and try to talk to the developer and put it into a stored procedure, call it a stored procedure, so that way we can manage it on the database in one spot, and then we can always see what the code is applied in later when we apply an error to see them. Because if it's done in code, we can't track it unless we record what's going on in the cache.
That's pretty awesome. So you'd actually want to build it in a stored procedure for maintainability of code and for debugging and troubleshooting too, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Working on something, you can see what's being built and what's not, and you can keep track of it. And you have some type of idea of how to build an index around the provider and what the impact is across.
That's very cool. Which I guess that kind of makes sense. But I mean, so it all depends really how involved and how much relationships or how much interaction you guys have with them and it seems like that's security, generally speaking, from what I can tell, is not, I mean, the technical piece is doable. It's hard sometimes to have to think about and do it right, but it's not the hardest part. It seems like working with other people, and it's the politics and the personalities that are the hardest thing to work through. And I just, and that sums it up right there, because I'm a wannabe. I'm a security wannabe, because really and truly the security people doing real security are the DBAs or the web developers, are the ones maintaining the systems day in, day out. The ones that set the passwords, the one that set the database up, how they set it up. Make sure there's stored procedures so I know how to maintain it going down the road, as opposed to like, oh, just get it done crufty style. Because, hey, we got our deadlines and we have to, right? And business must continue. It's the hardest thing to get around. And I don't know the best way, but it's tough. But OWASP has some great pointers on ways to get around SQL injection in particular. And injection can be from, mostly your actors are trying to get data, but you have some threat actors. And I like to kind of think of it as threat actors and know what kind of threat landscape your system may be in front of is one of the easiest ways to try to prevent from things, because you can't prevent from everything. So think of, okay, what kind of data do I have? Who would generally be going after this data? And so that most people, whenever they try to do SQL injection, it's to get data out. But it also can be used nefariously to actually destroy data or tamper data in some other cases. Also, another good way that I've seen kind of being able to access data is having trust zones or trust boundaries. So having an area where that you can only, it's like read-only data, you can't copy it down to anything. It's to this place where it can't leave the network, or even more kind of cool stuff. Whitelist any kind of routines or calls from trusted or trusted parts of the network, or We did it for time of day. So you can do time of day when you know there's a backup routine that's going to be happening, and it's like, okay, hold up. Stop logging all that crap because they're going to be touching that database that's the most precious. I know it's this backup job. I know it happens this time from that time. I know it uses this account, and you can like tune that out. So to speak. It's good to know what's happening, and you want to make sure you monitor, of course, the success or failure of that job. But yeah, that's one of the ways you can establish good trust zones and trust boundaries and understanding the differences from an external made call to an internally made call that's more trusted, hopefully. You'd hope. Not always the case. Encryption. I don't even know how much time I have. Encryption at rest, it seems like the only value you get is from physical theft. If anybody's going in your data center, taking out hard drives out of your servers, golly geez, you might have other problems, but it's still, you just got to do it because it's one of those easiest check boxes. In transit, this is still easy. I feel like I haven't had any problem. I know that like for a long time, like the overhead to negotiate the certs, it's like I have not seen that. It usually only happens once, and once the stream and session is established, it's all good from there, so I've never seen this run into any kind of performance hits or anything. Now, there was some interesting, this last one, in application or like in memory kind of encryption. I don't know if I'd necessarily worry about that as much, or maybe you do, depending on how, like what your use case is and what your model is, how you're presenting this data. But one of the things I would say is encrypt those columns in the table that have like, okay, your social, your whatever kind of PII data, encrypt it, hash it in most of your tables, or abstract it somehow. I don't know if you need to really be able to reverse it in some cases. I know some cases we just want to have it all there, and maybe we just need it all there in one place and reference it through other ID mechanisms, so you don't have to keep like just dangling good deets out in other databases that people you forgot your login or should have been watching there as well. So that's, yeah, the encryption there. Buffer overflow, honestly, just keep your stuff up to date. It seems like from all the research I've done on how to prevent this stuff, of course, attack surface. I'm a big proponent. Think about your attack surface. If you can limit that, there's 0 days out there, essentially things that are not patched today or unknown unknowns until they're known, and still no patch out there. And by limiting your attack surface, you're going to limit the amount of effects that those would have on you. And then backups, once again, one of those practices. Okay, we're almost done, I promise, I think. Yeah. Now, did you know that all statistics are lies? Lies. All stats are lies. Yeah. So 81% of hacking-related breaches leverage stolen or weak creds. So that was kind of interesting. I had no idea, and that was the one from last year. I don't know if have you guys heard Verizon Business, their data breach report? They do it every year for 8 years now, I think. Well, it's kind of neat. It's kind of fun. Like I said, it's got that threat actor view on things, and it shows you even by industry, like the common attacks and those kind of things. And so like to kind of get yourself on some exec level summary knowledge, which, like I said, I got those pictures, y'all. So I definitely read it. Automate changing of passwords, because by the Lord, man, it's painful having to do it manual, but it can be done manually. I've done it because it's hard to even automate password changing, because like, where do I put the keys now? It's like, okay, hopefully you have an HSM, so ask your security guys if they got an HSM and see if they got an API access to the HSM. And if they do, then you can get some keys all day and they're secure. And you don't even have to keep the privates on any of your boxes. You don't even have to worry about it. You just keep it in this cool little, the HSM hardware security module. I think that's what it is. It's just a really hardened box. You can't get stuff out of very easily, but at least private keys in particular. But then also some vendor supply tools. Check out for, I had no idea MS SQL 2016 did this. They have a vulnerability scanner and a data classification tool. We've been trying to do data classification at one of my jobs back for a long time, and they actually have a native tool that will go in and help you classify data so you can help the security guys fingerprint when those things leave the network. And it'll hopefully be able to pinpoint it by logs or some mechanism. I'm not sure how that works, but I saw it out there. I thought it was pretty cool. Some more references, just some more tools, but and these are all out there. I'll get the links to you. It's on the Google Drive, but But yeah, that was it. Thank you guys for sitting with me here. Any questions? Yes.
Look at the information beautiful visualization on data breaches.
No.
So if you pull it up, you can actually see and click on every data breach that's happened, how many people it's affected, and what type of data was affected.
And data is beautiful. I will tell you that. That's amazing.
They'll break down the article when it happens.
So I'm going to have to add that link to my slides and be like, I found it. That's pretty awesome. Any other questions? I'm just kidding. No, thank you for that. All right, good. Excellent. Thank you all so much.